Welcome to Rice TVX and the latest episode of the Rice Crypto Show. Today we have a crypto freedom spotlight. We're going to be talking about a project called CoolADE, the autonomous donation engine. Today's guest is a good friend, no stranger to the show, Eric Sullivan from Consent of the Governed. Now, before we get into it, a couple quick messages from the sponsors of Rice TVX, and you can find information for BitSwap DEX, Presearch, and Monarch down below in the video description.
BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Oh, I totally know. Look at me trying to be all professional and messed up my little stream right here. This right here is going to be airing first as an exclusive video on my Patreon channel, and then it may be making its way to my backup channel on YouTube, and it will definitely make its way over to Odyssey and Library. But before we get into it, if this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you're subscribed, and also make sure you subscribe to my backup channel, Rice TVX2, the sequel. And in case anything ever happens to my channels on YouTube, make sure you're following me on Odyssey, where I have backups of my full catalog and post up extra content as well. If you'd like to support the channel directly, check out my Patreon channel. I post up exclusive content and you get early access to videos. I'm going to have links down below for everything I just mentioned, but if you go over to ricetvx.com, I have links to all my social media sites, and you can sign up for my mailing list so that you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. And if you haven't already taken advantage of my partnership with Money Metals Exchange, you can get a free half ounce of silver. All you need to do is be a first-time buyer at moneymetals.com, purchase a minimum of $100, and be sure you use the promo code RICE, R-I-C-E. You get that free half ounce of silver, and it's an additional way to support the channel as well. I'm going to have links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything we talk about on today's show. All right, as I mentioned today, we're going to be talking about a project called CoolADE, the autonomous donation engine. And today's guest is going to be Eric Sullivan from Consent of the Governed. He's been on lots of different conversations. You can check out the Great Awakening playlist. He's been on there along with Tom P. from Consent of the Governed. I'm going to have links down below. I encourage everybody to go subscribe to Consent of the Governed YouTube channel and to check out CoolADE at CoolADE.org. And to go ahead and bring in today's guest, Mr. Eric Sullivan. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing very well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm as I was telling you before we started, I'm trying to be as lazy as possible. So I'm recording it in a unpublished live video so that I can kind of do my live editing so that later on I don't have to actually do any work with this video.
I wouldn't call that lazy. I'd call that efficient.
Yeah, well, I'm trying, as I was telling people after getting back from Miami, just trying to restructure my days so that I'm giving myself time in the morning and the evenings for me and spirituality, family life, and then focusing on work in between instead of pretty much waking up and going to sleep and just dealing with stuff all in between. So,
yeah, I'll tell you this, though. I mean, we've been talking for a little bit now, and geez, well over a year, maybe almost two.
It's going on 2 years.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, man. I've seen the channel like just full blown blossom and get really good, and the the stuff you put out is legit. You know, I'm not only am I on the channel, but I'm actually like a listener. You call me all the time and you're like, did you see that interview? And I'm like, well, most of the time I'm like, well, hell yeah. But if for some reason. I check it out.
Well, I mean, I
later.
put so much content out too. And also, I
it's
mean,
crazy.
we
The
talk
amount
about
of
it, but
content.
you were very instrumental in helping me when I was going through a lot of stuff early 2020 with my channel and restructuring, because I was thinking about starting a new channel, and you would give me the idea to just go ahead and keep it all in-house. And then I decided to rebrand, going from Rice Crypto to Rice TVX, and adding the Stranger Than Fiction element, which led me down a complete cool path of like the sovereignty, freedom, law stuff. Now, the history and the spirituality, I mean, that's great stuff, and I'm glad I got to add that to my repertoire of stuff that I can talk about. But the law, sovereignty stuff definitely coincides so strongly with my personal beliefs and convictions of why I got involved in Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain technology, the power of decentralization, getting rid of those intermediaries, those third parties, the middleman. And so when we first met, one of the things that you had told me about was a project that you were helping somebody else with that ultimately passed away. And I'll let you explain the story. And that's what gave birth to what is now becoming CoolADE, CoolADE. So what I'd like to do, where there's a little bit more fruition coming to the project. I've been involved as an advisor, trying to help use my network and link you up with the right people and let that blossom into them introducing you to other people. And it's kind of come full circle. So here we are today. And people are like, CoolADE, what the hell are these guys talking about? So the simplest way that you can. And also, I meant to say that, not only are you, one half of the superhero duo known as the Consent of the Governed, but you are also a community member and one of the original contributors to this project. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you're talking about CoolADE, I was one of the original, I wouldn't say founders. I had somebody that was calling me all the time because I was very interested in crypto, like you, very interested in freedom. And he was talking to me a lot about, what he wanted to do. This is 2017. And he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing an ICO. He had just gotten back from the Keystone XL pipeline protests and was like, their infrastructure is garbage. He was really big into nonprofits, and he's like, I want to do something that'll help, fund, good works, right? Some things that may be good works. And we had this conversation, and I said, dude, don't do an ICO. Like, that's one of the worst things you could possibly do for this. And here's why, and just listed out a bunch of things. And we were talking for a few months before he passed away. And then I had already been doing my own thing where I was like, oh yeah, I'll just do what everybody else does in crypto. If you can't code, I'll just help people, advise projects or do a consulting firm for people who, can utilize these various tools that lie within the crypto realm. And all of a sudden it ended up being this business that I created to do the consulting and stuff. We got consulted and brought in to work on CoolADE. One of the guys that was in there is a huge venture capitalist. They wanted to go with this CoolADE project. They wanted to go it didn't make sense to me. They wanted to go a very a for-profit route, which I was okay with and I was on board with. I was only one little part of it. And, this thing, went back and forth and wishy-washy. We were, having conversations all the time and looking at Excel spreadsheets for years, looking at revenue models. And when it was all said and done, a lot of people just fell by the wayside. And I was kind of the only one that was like, yo, you guys don't see the potential in this. And I talked to them and said, here's the deal. I'm going to take this the other route. If you guys want in afterwards, it doesn't matter to me because I'm not making any money off this anyway. You could sue me for whatever you want. This is going to be, the people's actual, application when I'm done with it. Right. And every single one of them said, yeah, if you can get it done, that's exactly what Tyler would have wanted. He's the guy that passed away. So I think 3 months later, I started talking to you And since then, I'm not going to say that it's evolved in different ways as far as what I was concerned with, being in the project, but it has definitely blossomed, and obviously, coming full circle to now with this conversation. I mean, the last, I think, 6-8 months, I've been doing nothing but looking at how to not end up like Ross Ulbricht and make this thing actually work. So try and figure out how, how do you how do we do the things that we need to do, and how the hell do the elites get to just do this stuff at whim, where I would automatically just be put in prison,
Right.
So I think we have married the two, and you are obviously involved in that, but we can explain that further. But for the record, legally speaking, I am, Eric Sullivan, the creator of the CoolADE Foundation, which is a unincorporated business organization that acts as the offices of the Private Management Association known as CoolADE. So, I mean, that's a
And we'll
big
get,
stretch.
yeah,
That's
we'll
a-
get into the
yeah,
PMA thing I
yeah,
mean, this is
yeah,
where kind of the path of law and
yeah.
crypto and blockchain kind of cross,
Mhm.
especially in the cypherpunk mentality that
Yeah,
I believe you come from.
yeah.
So what the hell is Kool-Aid?
Okay, so the easiest way to talk about Kool-Aid, in my opinion, is to talk about what it is at its most reductionist base core value, and that it's a very dense phrase, but it is nothing more than a smart contract escrow system for decentralized project management. Um, that sounds,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
when we were talking about it earlier, and I was going to try to pass some
Mhm.
information on to somebody, you had said you added in template, so it was a
Well, it's a
smart contract escrow template system.
right, right. So, in order to have anything regarding programming, you have to have quantification and at least some level of understanding the user base, right? So, UX, UI, you have to understand. So, if you're looking at something like law, right? The law, if you're looking at all law, you could say, "Oh, I'm a divorce attorney," or "I'm a, you know, a state attorney," or "I am a, criminal attorney," those kind of things. Those are all like various different templates within what you would consider, bar association law. Um, that same idea holds true for anything regarding a user to utilize Kool-Aid. They need to know what they're going to do, but they have to be guided to that. And in order to program a smart contract system, due to our level of technological advancement, it's not as big as it needs to be. It's not as robust and understanding as it needs to be. So we need to create small templates in order to guide the user into what they need to do. You and I talk a lot about building bridges, especially in technology and law and that kind of thing. So it makes sense to build the bridge, as robust as possible, understanding the idea of scaling, but with a template system, you can kind of aim everything the way it needs to be aimed. One of the things that we discuss constantly is this idea of having multiple things, right? So if I want to um, if I want to help a community, how many ways can you help a community, right? Well, there's humanitarian, there's disaster relief, there's different blood drives and medical things that need to be done, and then there's funding like crowdfunding and things like that. So those are the four things we started with, which is why the logo looks the way it does. Um, and it's going to branch out from there, but this template idea is the only true way to actually, in my opinion, be able to start programming smart contracts and getting the data you need, and then you can branch out from there. So it just seems to be a very, I hate using the term, but a very organic model of just branching out into what is naturally utilized within, society. So
Right. Okay. So the website says gigging and giving for the good of humanity, create a cause, solve the problem. There's talk of nonprofits, transparency in their actions, the allowing for people to pay people for doing good, whether it's cleaning up a river or a highway in their area and compensating them in some fashion. What is the core functionality of what CoolADE is, and how has it developed? I guess I can use the how has it developed more after you answer what is the core functionality of CoolADE.
Yeah, so the core functionality, like that first sentence I was just saying regarding a smart contract template escrow system for project management, right? The idea is project management has a multitude of issues, and depending on how high you go up, whether it's a nonprofit, NGO, from the biggest all the way down to the smallest, there are issues regarding transactions. And Bitcoin was one of the things that really revolutionized the idea of a transaction, a push rather than a pull transaction. So escrow is the same. So if you've ever bought a house or you've ever done any contracting work or anything like that, there's always this weird system that utilizes trust. And this system, typically for larger scale projects, has to use attorneys and really weird random phase structures and draw systems and things like that. So the idea behind this is to create a trustless system through smart contracts to not have to worry about the money anymore. So if you, Chris, wanted to go and do something and somebody wanted to fund that, you would know that the funds are there, and you would know that the funds would be released, and that the expectations regarding the release of the funds were completely explained before you even invited yourself into that contract, right? So the idea is to explain and know exactly what you're doing before you decide to go and do it, and B, you know that the funds are there. And on the other side of the coin, the person who's funding it knows that you're apt to do it. You can actually get that done. And then B, when you've done it up to their standards, right? So all of those things have been put into place without the need of an attorney or anything else. So in doing that, as far as its core functionality right there, you can see, at least I can see, I don't know how many people listening or watching can see, that would take out and just disintermediate a bajillion things that happen in every given day that all of us take for granted. I mean, just the idea of escrow, if anybody goes up and looks up like what an escrow is, I was actually listening to a podcast from Catherine Austin Fitz, and she was discussing what she would look at as a solution to get us out of all of this garbage. She was actually talking about localized escrow systems. And I was sitting there going, like, I actually just tweeted it. I was like, holy crap. This is the first time people start talking about escrow systems in a localized fashion. Somebody's got to get me in touch with Catherine Austin Fitz like today. I mean, and she's one to know. I mean, she was the secretary of the HUD. She understands this stuff, and it's really cool. I mean, it's validating for me to be thinking about this and working on it for 3-4 years. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit. Yeah. People start understanding it. So, anyway,
well, what do you think is the importance of this, and why do you feel like it's needed? Why are you putting your time into bringing together people to get this thing to be built to completion?
Well, I think it acts in a couple of different ways. One is it's very experimental, right? And it's responsibly experimental. We're not doing this in a for-profit manner. There's no way, the way this is set up, there's no way to just rug people, right?
Right.
the way the foundation is set up and the way the PMA is set up is to actually breed confidence within the donating community, within the people who want to be either funding or doing the good works. I mean, true philanthropists, right? We look at things like the Red Cross and wonder how the hell they can get $500 billion for Haiti and then only build 5 houses, but gain their infrastructure and then have a AAA rating with all of the people that rate them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird thing to see that go on. And then to combine that with other things, right? So if I wanted to crowdfund something through GoFundMe, nobody knows where that money goes. You know what I mean? Like, I can lie and say that my husband had a heart attack, get $50,000, and then go buy crack, you know? So there's this level of transparency that doesn't exist within this new realm of, you know, crowdfunding and everything else. So that's one of the things that is, in my opinion, you know, absolutely necessary for what I think humanity is trying to aim for. This idea of transparency and being able to, again, disintermediate everything,
Right.
while you know, being able to just trust math. You know, you don't have to trust another soul, but just trust math. Yeah,
it's trustless, and you don't
Right.
have to trust. You can verify
Right.
everything
Right.
because it's all public and it's a public accounting system. So
right.
yeah, I think it's a cool idea.
And the other side of it is, I mean, the second caveat to this system is we're also trying to create this localization aspect of, you know, barter and trade in all currencies around the world, legally and lawfully, and possibly build, you know, local economies that are outside of the sandbox at which we all, you know, complain about, and
giving us
and
an option to opt out, an
right,
alternative
right,
system to utilize that doesn't support the legacy system, the central banking fractional reserve fiat
right.
system that we're trying to get away from.
Well, and all the time, like, allowing people the freedom to interact with each other while enticing them to, you know, stay within that little dual entry accounting system,
Right.
you know, through various means that we can explore later. But yeah, it's an interesting concept, the localization aspect. I mean, if Bitcoin was localized to your, you know, certain area, like wooden tokens are in Oregon and certain little states, and yeah, I mean, we can go on and on about
It's just
various different.
replacing the wooden token, the physical wooden token idea with the digital representation.
I mean, it is legitimately, that's it. It's just,
Right.
it's just something that is the way we would say it in this, you know, PMA would be, it's a transfer of value. You know, it's a free exchange or a free transfer of value. So,
And we'll get into the PMA aspect
Yeah.
100%. Now, for people that are wondering, I mean, this like just CoolADE and the functionality you're speaking about gives people various options on how they want to utilize the platform. But then if somebody wants to look at this in like a more concentrated form, like the fact that you come from a construction background and this is a project management tool, you explain that someone could take this technology, white label it, and use it for like a specific purpose, a specific field, like for construction or for bookkeeping or whatever the situation might be.
Right. And that's the funny thing is that, you know, I'm not looking to make money on anybody trying to white label this product, right? It's not my product to try and white label. And we'll get into the whole trust thing. As the creator of the CoolADE Foundation and handing all of this intellectual property off to the board of trustees, I can't technically take this intellectual property and do anything with it. But what I want people to do is actually start utilizing it in a way, once it's, you know, up and testing and everything, utilize it in a way where you see fit, right? So if I'm a contractor and all of a sudden, you know, my boss says, hey, I want to build a staircase here and it's $500, I could say, well, go on to CoolADE, put it on $500, put the money in there, and then I'll start building that staircase, and then we both on our phones, we take pictures, and we both decide like, yep, the staircase is done. Good, that's all done. That's a crowd-funded cause right there. Even though we were using that for a for-profit entity, we're both members of the private membership association, and we decided like this is what we want to use it for. Now, when we get that data, yes, we can absolutely take that, that model and utilize that someplace else. All of a sudden you're now taking the idea of Angie's List and you're giving it true value. You're giving it a feedback loop and a programmable smart contract template to be able to say, hey, escrow this money for me in any currency I want. And when it's done, I will get paid out. I think I would really like to see that happen, not for just the reasons of people getting personal value and being able to actually do what they want to do, but also for us to be able to build something out, later and work on that kind of thing. So. Yeah.
Now, the reason that you're utilizing blockchain technology, I would imagine, is for a combination of transparency, uncensorability, and then the smart contracts, because I don't really see smart contracts being utilized without blockchain technology.
Yeah, and that really does depend on, what network you put it on. Meeting through you and a couple of other people like Nathan Hawk and everything else, through meeting, Colin Cantrell and discussing what his view of Nexus was in the future, and knowing how big of a build Nexus was, I was like, holy cow, this guy is legit building the same idea that I had this thing doing when it was finally scaled. And we just went back and forth and talk and still do. And it was really like, two peas in a pod at that point. So Nexus made a lot of sense. Not only that, gas fees. I mean, if you think about every transaction that would happen within this, ecosystem, just to be able to confirm it and do all sorts of stuff. I mean, look at all this stuff with the sushi swap and everything else. I mean, the amount of transaction data.
Well, yeah, I mean, the sushi swap thing. So
yeah,
I mean, if you're building something on like Ethereum, the issue is like when it gets congested, the transaction fees get high. But at the same time, there is a give and take for scalability and security. So, and then being decentralized. So then you have something, when you mentioned Sushi Swap, that's being built on Binance Smart Chain, which is a centralized system. So they can have a lot faster throughput because it's not decentralized. It's controlled by one node. So that's where people have to choose where to build. And, obviously people who are watching who know that I'm, who understand and comprehend why I'm involved with Bitcoin and crypto and decentralized technology, blockchain, open source, is for these very reasons. And Nexus, I really feel like, is one of those blockchains that really encompasses the freedom aspects and not right now, but based off the white paper, the visions and their connections and their team, they're going to be able to build these visions that they're talking about with quantum resistant blockchains, with already having the scaling worked out, having an off-world internet that's decentralized, that's using the low Earth orbit satellites and the ground technology to create those mesh networks. I mean, those are powerful things when you can get rid of the failure points.
Yeah.
The blockchain gives you that uncensorability, but if you're dealing with everything on planet, you have a failure point. Your ISP, different situations can ultimately censor. We've seen what happened with like applications like Parler, and we've seen what's happening with truth tellers or even Infinite Media, how they're being censored.
Right. And that's where, when we were looking at networks and we're like, holy crap, what do we put this on? This one's inefficient regarding cost. That will never work. This one, is way too centralized to put it on there. Some of them were really like in between. But others like Nexus offered a really good, avenue to do X, Y, and Z, right? Which aimed more towards what CoolADE was aiming towards, being more nonprofit, forward-facing, that kind of thing. That made a lot of sense to go that direction. There are, and I've, you and I have been to, together, have been to a bunch of crypto conferences, and I talk to people and they're like, well, why don't you use Coin to do it? Or why don't you use Litecoin to do it? Or why don't you do this? And I always tell them, like, why would I hitch my cart to one horse when I can hitch it to all horses? Why wouldn't I utilize 20, 30 different currencies or all of the world's currencies for this application? Why would I ICO it? Why would I create my own coin? Even though we can talk about scaling in the future and actually building from the ground up in that aspect, but why would you look at one thing? So Nexus is a great model for everything we could possibly build, even a full stack build on, because they offer some of the best scaling solutions for the future. But that doesn't mean, one of my favorites that we saw a while ago, it was one of the first, was Holochain. A local developer here was a developer for Holochain for a while, and they do a really cool idea regarding actually utilizing processing power that you're not utilizing and building a model of decentralization. They call it a DHT, a distributed hash table, where you're actually able to share computer processing power only while you're utilizing, the application itself. So there is no AWS anymore. You just disintermediated, Amazon Web Service. There's no server. There's no ISP, for the most part. You're just rocking, a localized hub, and it's true, sharing potential. So that was definitely, I would say Holochain was definitely a big part of, our growth, like going to various hackathons and talking to, the founder of Holochain. He's been into, Bitcoin before Bitcoin, talking about meta currencies and everything else. So yeah, I mean, this is a well thought out project. It's just, we've really been waiting for the legal aspect of being able to transfer value without certain licenses within a private setting to really, get this thing
Right.
as far as the ball rolling. Yeah.
Okay, now when it comes to what you just said, I do want to talk about the Private Membership Association, Private Management Association, PMA. I want to talk about that, but I don't want to get into all of the 100% specifics about why. And once people listen to just the general kind of what's the reason why you're doing this in private, it'll start to put people's it should make sense. Everything should add up, and you should understand and comprehend everything very clearly. But I don't want you to go into things that could potentially put anybody in sort of a negative light when it comes to lawful or legalities.
Right. Okay.
When you're skating that line, because that's the one thing that me and you both are learning. We can talk about this to a degree, but we need to remain as in the private as possible with this, or it really just defeats the purpose and what's trying to be done. So, and this is something that I've been learning a lot in the legal fiction strawman law element. It seems like I was telling you earlier, I'm discovering it more and more now that my eyes are open to this. But when I talk about dualities and everything, like a positive and negative, a yin and a yang, a dark and a light, there's also that same aspect, and there's a duality in most everything that has a public and a private side. And I realize that even public banks offer private banking, but you've got to be in a certain upper echelon of earnings to be able to participate in those reindeer games, versus what you're saying is like
not necessarily
knowing what to say.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing what to say is one of the big things. And that's what you just alluded to throughout that whole thing, was knowing what to say even in this conversation right now, right? So
Right.
I can't tell everybody in this conversation like, hey, come over here, I'll teach you how to get out of that, because that puts
But
me in this general liability state.
if somebody wants to
Right.
know more information, they can
Right.
reach out. And if somebody
Yeah.
wants to be involved or get on the private side, then we'll see you on the other side.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And um, I'm not saying I'll help you get to the other side of anything. I'll just say that, my contact information is right there, Eric
It
at
should all, I mean,
CoolADE.org.
everything should be in relation to
Right.
being involved with what CoolAid is trying to build and be a part of it. And
Yeah.
publicly,
Yep.
it's not as if I'm going to be running around announcing this and wearing t-shirts, but I am one of the trustees and I am involved in the
Yep.
project.
Yeah. Yeah. So, actually, Rice is one of the trustees, because I felt that Rice has helped the project out at a very substantial way, in a very substantial way, as far as networking is concerned. So, as the creator of a unincorporated business organization, the first thing you do is you hand off all of that, IP, which is intellectual property or any property whatsoever, whether it be domain names or already created, templates and things like that. You hand that property over to a trustee for a certain reason. And that this idea that we're talking about, this foundation, the CoolADE Foundation, is one aspect of this thing. And it's being created not only responsibly, but it's being created to die. So the foundation itself is being created to die. The board of trustees are being created to um, get themselves, basically work themselves out of work, and then utilize the platform. But throughout the whole process, they're actually utilizing the platform to, to actually, monitor their earnings regarding, what they do. So that's one of our next meetings, is to discuss, the board of trustees and compensation regarding hourly compensation for X amount of things. And um, this idea of this organization, CoolADE Foundation, is just to manage um, the intellectual property and the property that has been created over the course of the last 3 or 4 years in a very decentralized manner, and one of the most decentralized, legal, and lawful entities that has ever been created. And that is, the idea of a trust and a PMA conglomerate. This idea of these two being put together. So it's also being put together, for a multitude of reasons. It acts as because we are a charitable, forward facing, we're a forward facing charitable organization. Obviously, it's really hard for any entities to really want to say, hey, let's go after this guy and sue him for doing all of that stuff, when all he was doing was helping people in a ridiculously transparent manner, right? So it's not like, we all know the FUD of Bitcoin, like, oh, it's used for money laundering, even though the US dollar is used for more money laundering and drug trafficking than any other thing in the world, right? Well, obviously they're going to be able to spin that in a certain way. This allows us, it's almost one of those deals. When I first got into Bitcoin, I had to ask a multitude of questions, find out all of the pain points, find out all of the attack surfaces, and then I was able to get into it. It took months for me to do the research and figure that out. And I went at this with the same way of going about it. And I think that little one, couple of different paragraphs right there really sum it up pretty well. The PMA is just a private membership association. So when you sign on to terms and conditions for Facebook, you're signing on to not a private membership association, you're a public membership association. You're actually signing on, and in my opinion, don't take this as gospel. The only difference between the two is one has the support of the federal government, which you can wholeheartedly believe in. I think they've done a fantastic job of running my, account for as long as they have. And I disagree with them, but they've been able to do their thing. And I think that this does not constitute what they typically will tell us to do or not do. So I want to run this in a different manner. So that's what this private membership association is there for. And if you want explanations of why or how, or the precedents of how this is set up, just look at the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
It says here, you ever wonder why the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars locations, can sell liquor without a license? PMAs or why? So now, so like a gentleman's club, a strip club is a private member, or like it's a private member bar, so it still falls under the
that's
jurisdiction.
In North Carolina. That's not in all states.
And it depends on how you operate them too. But basically, it still puts you under a jurisdiction of the alcohol control and all those kind of things. When you're operating in a truly private capacity, the best way to explain it to people that I've gotten is the ideas of homeowners associations.
Yes.
Because a homeowners association can establish the rules for how everybody's house needs to uniform, right? You can't be certain colors. Your lawn can't be above a certain height. You got to keep like your bushes trimmed, all these different things, whether it's all bushes must be trimmed in the shape of animals. Some of the stuff may sound ridiculous in the terms of a homeowners association, but it's outside the parameters of law.
Right. So,
but it can be enforced. It can be enforced by law because of the agreements that are made, but it takes it out of the jurisdictional control. So somebody can operate as a doctor without a medical license, as long as the people that he or she is, or it, or however they identify as seeing, knows that they're not actually a practicing physician, that they didn't go to medical school and obtain a college degree of some sort.
Well, actually,
and they can practice medicine without any of those things.
Well,
you can practice law, but you can't go into a court.
No, you can actually do both. Robert Michael would say that you could have a bar associate license, right? And you can also practice license or practice law, or at least represent somebody or act as counsel for somebody in an actual bar associated court case. And that's, you'd actually call that pro se, right? So I am acting, you would never want to say I'm acting in pro se, because you would screw yourself. So don't use that term if you're representing yourself. Don't even.
But you want to do what it means, but you don't want to say what it is.
Right. So
it's like if you're running, you don't need to tell somebody you're running because they realize that you're running.
Right. So we can go down a couple of ideas of precedents which might work for a lot of people and might help them understand what's going on. So the Boy Scouts of America is a private membership association. Everybody can be there and they can do everything they want to do.
Oh, yeah, they can.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So in the
especially
90s,
if they're Catholic Boy Scouts.
Right. So in the 90s, one of the scout leaders came out as gay, and the Boy Scouts of America fired them. And under current regulations, not laws but regulations, it would absolutely, they would be liable to be sued. Well, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court actually said, no, they're a private membership association, and you signed on the dotted line that said you had a contract between them and they can do whatever they want. We are not within the purview to be able to tell them how to run their private property, basically, is what was said, because that's the true be all and end all of a private membership association as compared to any public incorporation ever, is that your federal government was created in the first place to do one thing. First and foremost, that's the number one thing: protect private property rights. And that's private property rights, not public. There are two very different things, and that's kind of what I've been trying to explain. So the number one thing is they cannot encroach on private property rights, and they have to protect them. So if you have property and you know that it's yours, and you can claim to the government that it is yours in a private manner, that's yours. And they
Right.
cannot encroach on it. Doesn't matter if they're the IRS or the SEC or any of the other 3 or 4 letter agencies, they can't do it. But it's up to you to figure out how that works, how you get out of the public and how you work in the private. And you can do both. You can absolutely do both here and there if you want to, but that's up to you. And that's up to the way you want to do your walk, how you want to walk through life and find out how you want to go about it. Some people will absolutely say that I have to go full wholeheartedly in this direction. Some people will say I want to dance between, and other people will say I don't want any liability ever, and I just want to go to the bar and go to work and go home. So yeah, I mean it's a very interesting thing we've gotten ourselves into here in America. This experiment,
I call it a conundrum.
It is a conundrum.
It's one of my favorite words.
Mm.
It's definitely a conundrum. Well, dude,
we're
I think
about to go into our next phase, which is talking about all of the random stuff regarding,
I think
lawful.
Let's well, I definitely want to touch on some stuff, but I think kind of we've done a really good job of covering what CoolADE is from a basic standpoint. I wanted to try to keep this as focused on CoolADE as possible.
Yeah.
So let me see here real quick. Was there anything aside from, what is it? Why is it needed? Why blockchain? Why building a nexus? Why private membership association? We talked about the core functionality.
You're going to do some editing on this, right?
Nope.
You're not editing this at all.
No, it's the reason why I'm doing it like this.
Awesome. Okay. Because I was going to say, I really have to. Yeah, never mind.
But we're going to end the video and then we can talk for just a real quick second. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you want to touch on, or do you think that we've done a great job of talking about what this cool ass autonomous donation known as CoolADE is?
I think there's very few aspects of this, I mean, at a base level that we didn't touch on, right? So we already talked about being able to take, a multitude of currencies, being able to take, and transfer value back and forth. I would say this, to end everything. It's a very complex system as far as the build is concerned, and it sounds ridiculously complex, but it's a very easy idea. And the idea is that you do a service for somebody, and it is worth X. You should be able to take your time and effort and then equate that to whatever you want to do, right? And then you should be able to store that value in any way you deem fit. And then you should also be able to take that and not just do it on a Facebook level where it's like this weird global thing where you rarely talk to people, but no, you're actually going to go out and do that. You're going to meet people that are in your area. You're going to create friends. You're going to be an actual social network, not this big social network that we know now. You're going to have fun with the people that are like-minded with you, and you're going to do those things. And you're also going to be able to supplement your income while you're doing the things that you normally just dream about doing. Like, I want to clean a river, or I want to, go help this person out, but I can't. I have to go to work. Well, there's a lot of people out there that are like that, especially now. And I think that the one thing we all need is A, freedom, B, the freedom to be able to take our own currency, which is our time. It's the only thing we actually own, and to actually sell that for what we want without any intrusion, without any intermediaries. And we should be able to have that kind of ability to contract with other people without any intrusion whatsoever. And we should be able to do that trusting. We should be able to do that without, any issues. And if there is an issue, we should know that there's somebody there to act as an arbitrator about it. And that's all CoolADE is about, is to be able to you know, feel comfortable doing everything you want to do, be able to use your time wisely and negotiate that properly, and to be comfortable when something may arise. And that's legit what it is.
Word up, word up. You did a
Yeah.
good job explaining
Cool.
it. I mean, like, we can expand on things in further videos, and then bring in even some of the other people that are involved if they want to be public about it, and discuss some of the ways that things are being done as generically as possible, to give people some insight in how this is, and how basically we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, and making sure that
Absolutely
we're not doing anything that's confrontational, that could be looked at as adversarial, that would be put in any negative light, as long as we're doing everything with honor and all lawfulness and legalities
and integrity. I mean, up and down. Like, you know, I think we should definitely touch on later the scalability of the idea. You know, within the private membership association and without,
100%.
and how that could actually turn into something that a lot of people would really like, and what I think the idea of an ICO was all about, which is one of the reasons why we created the autonomous donation engine. So yeah, we can get into that for sure.
Cool. All right. Well,
awesome.
To end the video, I want to let people know again, links will be down below. So you can check out the CoolADE website at CoolADE.org, CoolADE.org. And also, I definitely encourage everyone to go over and make sure you subscribe to Consent to the Governed's YouTube channel that features Mr. Eric Sullivan and Tom Patterman, collectively the superheroes, the superhero combination known as the COG, the Consent of the Governed. So make sure you're going over and showing some support to those cats. Eric, I appreciate your time as always. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to Rice TVX. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube backup channel, Rice TVX 2, the sequel. I was trying to be in coordination with this. Make sure you subscribe to the main channel. Make sure you subscribe to Rice TVX 2, the sequel, the backup channel. And make sure you follow me on Odyssey, where I have a full catalog of all my videos and all that good stuff. And as always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change. And Eric, if you could just bear with me for un momento, por favor. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you're subscribed, and also make sure you subscribe to my backup channel, Rice TVX 2, the sequel. And in case anything ever happens to my channels on YouTube, make sure you're following me on Odyssey, where I have backups of my full catalog and post up extra content as well. If you'd like to support the channel directly, check out my Patreon channel. I post up exclusive content and you get early access to videos. I'm going to have links down below for everything I just mentioned, but if you go over to ricetvx.com, I have links to all my social media sites, and you can sign up for my mailing list so that you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. And if you haven't already taken advantage of my partnership with Money Metals Exchange, you can get a free ½ ounce of silver. All you need to do is be a first-time buyer at moneymetals.com, purchase a minimum of $100, and be sure you use the promo code RICE, R-I-C-E. You get that free ½ ounce of silver, and it's an additional way to support the channel as well. I'm going to have links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything we talk about on today's show.